When I first pulled into Pinecrest Oaks, I thought we had finally found peace. After years of apartment living and thin walls, my wife Clara and I were ready for quiet. Our new house sat at the edge of a wooded cul-de-sac, a tidy single-story ranch with a screened porch and a yard just big enough for Clara's garden. We picked it specifically because it fell outside the Pinecrest Homeowners Association jurisdiction. We were done with rules about mailbox color, hedge height, and which way the blinds faced. Or so we thought. The trouble started before we finished unloading boxes. A woman appeared on our porch like she'd been waiting for the moving truck. Tall, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, manicured nails, and a smile that looked printed. She held a basket of muffins wrapped in cellophane. "Welcome, I'm Deborah, Pinecrest HOA president. We're thrilled to have you join our community." I told her politely that our deed placed us outside the HOA. That's why we chose the property. The smile flickered. For a split second, her face hardened like glass cracking under pressure. Then it snapped back. "That must be a clerical mistake," she said firmly. "Every home in Pinecrest belongs under our standards. Every single one." Her words had the finality of law. I laughed it off, thanked her for the muffins, and went back to carrying boxes. But a weight settled in my gut. Her eyes lingered too long on our locks, our windows, even the electric meter. When she left, I felt like I'd just signed up for something without knowing the terms. 2 days later, a typed letter appeared in our mailbox. Notice of community integration. It listed guidelines about lawn care, trash bin placement, even the approved shade of roof shingles. At the bottom, mandatory compliance expected for all residents. The HOA seal sat in the corner. I marched to the county office with the letter in hand. The clerk confirmed. My property was absolutely outside the HOA boundary. Official. Sealed. Done. But Deborah didn't accept it. She began showing up at odd times, standing at the curb while I mowed, stopping Clara in the driveway to ask about our finances and family plans. "I'm only trying to protect our neighborhood," she'd say. The sweetness was always undercut by a current of threat. Families who don't cooperate, well, it never ends well for them. Then came George, a stocky man in his 60s, with a booming laugh and a handshake that crushed bone. He introduced himself as a retired county assessor. "You know, Deborah's right," he told me casually. "Homes under the HOA appreciate faster. You'd be wise to refinance while rates are still favorable." He flashed spreadsheets, charts, even official-looking seals showing HOA houses outperforming others by 20%. When I asked how he knew we weren't in the HOA, he smirked. "Oh, Deborah keeps us all informed." That meant they were talking about us, studying us. My suspicion grew when I found faint scratches around our back door deadbolt, the kind locksmiths make when practicing with a pick. Someone had tested our locks. The harassment escalated like clockwork. Citations for imaginary code violations slid into our mailbox. Lawn too tall, fence blocking easement, mailbox height incorrect. Each carried city letterhead and fine amounts. When I called the city, officials swore no such violations existed, which meant someone inside had manipulated records, someone with access. Clara begged me not to overreact, but the stress weighed on us. She started coming home from her nursing shifts exhausted, snapping over small things, forgetting conversations. Deborah's visits turned almost motherly. She'd bring coffee, pastries, sit with Clara, and say things like, "I'm worried about your husband. He seems paranoid. Maybe professional help could ease his mind." She suggested therapists, doctors, even marriage counselors. All trusted community providers. One morning, Clara's coffee tasted faintly bitter. Hours later, she forgot where she parked at work and called me in tears. That night, I reviewed the porch camera. It caught Deborah while Clara stepped away, uncapping a tiny vial and adding drops to the cup. My stomach flipped. I sent the mug to a private lab 2 towns over. Results: benzodiazepines, tranquilizers. My wife was being drugged. I stopped the poisoning by replacing everything Deborah could access. Within days, Clara's clarity returned, and with it came horror. "I thought I was losing my mind," she whispered when I showed her the footage. She's been drugging me for weeks. Together we realized the plan. Weaken us, fracture us, make us question each other until compliance looked like salvation. Still, the network was bigger than just Deborah. Our supposed lawyer, a polished woman named Erica who we'd hired for help, turned out to be feeding our private documents directly to Deborah. I discovered it by chance. Driving past an office park, I saw them together through a glass wall, laughing, flipping through our bank statements. Betrayal stung worse than any threat. We fired Erica immediately, but the damage was done. They knew everything. The final straw came one morning when Clara's car refused to brake at a stop sign. Mechanics found the brake line had been deliberately scored, sliced just enough to fail under pressure. A note left under the wiper read, "Accidents happen. Widows sell quickly." I called the state police, not local, fearing corruption. Detectives confirmed professional sabotage. We were officially in danger. Around this time, I was contacted by Miguel, a man whose family had lived in a neighboring subdivision. "She did it to us too," he said on the phone. "Drugged my wife, fabricated violations, forced us to sell my grandmother's house at half price. I've been collecting evidence." "You're not alone." He introduced us to other families. Widows, retirees, overwhelmed heirs, all pressured into selling after harassment campaigns. Their stories mirrored ours down to the smallest detail. Over 8 years, Deborah had orchestrated at least a dozen forced sales, funneling properties to investors tied to her board allies. Estimated theft, nearly $2 million. We formed a coalition, shared files, affidavits, video evidence. But Deborah's network was extensive. City clerks altered records, inspectors fabricated violations, doctors reinforced false diagnoses, and neighbors spied for discounts on dues. She had turned the entire HOA into a machine of control and profit. The turning point came from an unlikely place. George, her loyal enforcer. He approached me one night in the parking lot of a grocery store, eyes darting. "She's slipping," he muttered. "Too many people asking questions. I don't want to go down with her." He handed me a folder thick with documents, financial records, recorded calls, blueprints of planned road expansions. Proof she wasn't just protecting property values. She was lining her pockets. Armed with that, we staged our counterstrike. We called a community reconciliation meeting, framing it as a chance to resolve disputes. Deborah couldn't resist the spotlight. She arrived in a power suit, confident, expecting deference. But waiting inside were state investigators, local news cameras, and half a dozen victim families ready to testify. The evidence detonated like a bomb. Video of Deborah slipping drugs into Clara's coffee. Audio of her describing removal protocols for resistant families. Financial trails linking her to shell companies and land deals. Neighbors gasped, reporters scribbled, cameras rolled. For the first time, her mask cracked in public. "You don't understand," she shrieked, eyes wild. "I made this community perfect. Every lawn, every mailbox, every family under control. Perfect." Her voice rose to a scream, "And you ruined it with your damn house outside the rules." She lunged toward me, fingers shaking. "Get out now. Get out now and restore my neighborhood." Her chant turned manic, each repetition more desperate. Officers closed in. By the time they cuffed her, she had collapsed to her knees, still screaming about perfection as cameras broadcast her breakdown. The aftermath was swift. State prosecutors filed charges: fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. Network members flipped quickly. Inspectors, clerks, even Erica the lawyer, claiming ignorance, cutting deals. Neighbors who once sided with Deborah recoiled in shame, realizing they had enabled a predator. Property values, ironically, rose once the corruption was excised. Pinecrest began rebuilding on genuine community instead of fear. Clara and I stayed. We planted her garden, installed stronger locks, and learned the hard way that sometimes the greatest threat to a home isn't crime from outside, but control from within. I'll never forget the look on Deborah's face as her empire collapsed. The certainty that her authority was absolute, shattered in an instant by exposure. Control was her religion, perfection her scripture. But in the end, her obsession destroyed her. We survived not by bending, but by shining light on her darkest tactics. Because sometimes the only way to beat an HOA tyrant is to show everyone just how dangerous their community spirit really is.